I think women give more heat than men.
No,
do you?
Okay.
I'm serious.
Thank you, Dove. So, Parsha Miketz, page 222.
What does it mean, Mickey?
Miketz means the end. Okay, we'll come to that soon. So we are in the midst of events that keep unfolding because of dreams. Right? We had Joseph's first dreams, the dreams of the bundles bowing down to his bundle, and also the dream of the 11 stars and the sun and the moon bowing down to him. Right? Then we have Yosef being sold, sent down to Egypt, sent down to Mitzrayim, and being in the house of Potiphar, being wrongly accused, and Yosef then is thrown into prison, where he interprets the dreams of the Sar HaMashkim and the Sar HaOfim, the baker and the butler. And then 2 years later, our Parsha begins with the Pharaoh's dreams. Right? The dreams that he had of the cows and the dreams that he had of the storks.
What about the dreams of the newlyweds?
Okay, and a Mazel Tov to, he used to be known as Margarito, now he's Eliezer, and to Lupe, right, who is now Michaela, that the conversion was completed, so Mazel Tov, and we had a chuppah.
Wow.
We had a chuppah on Sunday, right? It's about time they got married, right? Oh, okay, and there's going to be a little celebration tonight after Mariv.
7 o'clock or so?
After Mariv. Mariv is at 6:30, so at about 7 o'clock up at the Sephardic Minyan area. Okay, so how do we understand dreams? From a Jewish perspective, how do we understand dreams? And there are times that we do have dreams. People have dreams. Now, normally, at least when I wake up and I think about my dreams, I could sort of piece together, oh, this was on my mind, and then someone said that, and it all comes together in a manner that seemed to make sense during the dream. When you're looking back at it afterwards, it's pretty bizarre. Okay? But there are times when dreams actually are things that will happen in the future. We believe, like the Gemara says, right, there are no dreams that don't contain what's called devarim betelim, right, matters that of nonsense, right? But there also is a certain, at times, there is a certain reality to dreams. And Ramchal gives a very, very interesting explanation of how we understand the validity that, again, a small percentage, but sometimes dreams do have. We know that when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we are meant to say is the Moda Ani. We thank God, Shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla, that you've returned to me, my soul, bechemla, with your compassion. Rabba emunatecha, great is your faith. Right? And I like to explain the last words, great is your faith, meaning we're saying great God is your faith in us. Your faith in us is demonstrated by the fact that you've given us another day. And therefore that is the greatest demonstration of God's faith in us, that we have what to accomplish, we have our mission, we have that which only we can accomplish. Great is your faith. But we speak about the neshama, the soul, returning. And that is again based on the Kabbalistic concept that we have many different levels of the soul, and it's the lower parts that are in the body. The rest are shooting out from us into a whole different realm that we physically cannot perceive with our physical eyes. And when the body dies, then the neshama fully leaves. But when a person sleeps and the body is in that almost decommissioned state, then the body is no longer able to contain all the parts of the soul that it normally does contain when we are alive, and those leave the body. And therefore in the morning we say, Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, you've returned to me, my soul, with your compassion. Now, our understanding is, and it's very interesting how science has come out with something very similar. We understand Bereshit, which is the first word of the Torah, in the beginning, that God created beginning. Not just that in the beginning God created, or in the beginning of God's creating, but God created beginning. Meaning, time is a realm which we are placed within that realm. And we can't even imagine going beyond that realm. But time is a creation. Time is a created realm into which we are placed. It's interesting that science, and Ramban says along the same lines, that science says that time came about with the creation of matter. Before there was the creation of matter, before the Big Bang, there was no time. Time is something which applies to matter. But we say that God created, along with the creation, as Ramban says, beginning of Bereshit, God created this parameter of time. The spiritual realm is not within the tentacles. It's not within the grasp of this realm of time. That is why each of God's names represent a different aspect, not of God, but a different aspect of the way that God relates and connects to us. Each of God's names represents a way that He connects to us. The Rambam says there is one name that, to whatever degree we can understand it, which is of course very limited, which actually is a name of God, as a name which describes God to a certain degree. And that is the name that we are not allowed to pronounce. It was only pronounced by the Kohanim, by the priests in the temple, in the Beis HaMikdash. And that is the name that is written, Yud followed by a Hey, followed by a Vav, followed by a Hey. That is the name, we call it the ineffable name of God. And it's written like that, but we never pronounce it like that. We always pronounce it as if it's written Aleph Dalid Nun Yud. That's how we always pronounce it. What does this Yud K Vav K represent? So the intent that a person is supposed to have when saying that, not pronouncing that name, but when saying Aleph Dalid Nun Yud, when it's written Yud Hey, followed by a Vav, followed by a Hey, is Haya Hoveh V'Yihiyeh, which means God was, God is, and God will be. Now, we think often, right, our first understanding of that is, oh, God was, God is, and God will be. That's how we understand it. We time-bound creatures think along those lines. God was, before, God is, and God will be. But that's not what the name is saying. What the name is saying is God is, was, is, and will be. Meaning, there is no was, will be is. There is this cloak of time. And Rav Dessler, I've mentioned this before, explains it very, very interestingly. He said, let's say this was the map of our life. This was the map of my life. Okay? And we have this cloth, this cloak that's on it. And if we were to cut a hole in this, so over here, now the hole is over here, and there I am as a newborn, right? And we slowly move this cloak of time, and that opening now shows me as a toddler. Then it shows me as a young boy. Then it shows me as a teenager. Let's go quickly over those years. Then it takes me as a young man, right? As we go on, right? So what's happening? This cloak of time is slowly being moved. It is inexorably moving forward. And all of a sudden, what was over there is covered over. That's what was. Now it's what is, but in a second, what is just became what was, right? And over there, it's what will be. But it's all here. It's all here. If you lift up this cloak, lift up this cloth, it's all there. But we who are under or over, in this example, this cloak of time, so this cloak of time obscures that which was and will be, making it seem like it's history, it's future, but it's all there to those who are not under this cloak of time. So not that God was, God is, and God will be, but God, if we lift this up, God was, is, and will be. That is the start of an understanding in one of the great paradoxes in Judaism that Rambam, that Maimonides speaks about. And that paradox is that we have free will. One of the real basic foundation of Judaism is that we have free will. We are fully against this whole determinism that it's my environment and my genes and everything else that forces me to act in a certain way. In the very beginning of the Torah, we're told that there was a choice. There was a command given to Adam and Eve, and there was accountability for their not choosing correctly. And the Torah is all about our choices and our responsibility for that. But there seems to be there's a paradox. If we have free will, on one hand, yet we say that God knows everything. God has His yediyah, His knowledge. So if there is this knowledge, then how is there truly free will? That's the paradox of yediyah versus bechira. Yediyah is God's absolute knowledge of everything that was, is, will be. And yet we maintain that we have our bechira, our free will. I'm sorry?
That's the beauty of Judaism, I think.
What do you mean?
Because there is always the free will, even within something we don't know.
Okay.
So I think that's the beauty of it. It's
Okay.
not like a dogma, like everything is.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't understand.
Correct. And I believe Ravid asks on the Rambam, and the Rambam doesn't answer the question. Right? And I believe Ravid asks on the Rambam, so why are you posing the question if you're not going to give the answer? Right? You're putting doubts into people's minds. And an explanation that's given is that the Rambam wanted people to know that he didn't understand this paradox, and he was still the Rambam. Right? And a person should come along and think, if only the Rambam had thought of my question, right, then that would have overturned his faith, and etc., etc. No. We understand that we're never going to fully understand. It's interesting. One of the fundamental differences, I was reading early this morning, Rav Lichtenstein, Zichrono Livracha, writes that one of the fundamental differences between the Greek, as in Hanukkah, outlook on life and the Torah Jewish outlook on life is they had a sense that everything could be made, they can understand everything. Everything could be categorized, everything can be understood. It's all there for us to understand. And we understand that as much as we can understand, we can't understand.
Because
right?
they don't think
right?
abstractly.
Yes. And we are in God's world, and therefore there's no way that we can fully understand everything. So when it comes to this paradox, so we're never going to fully understand because we think we take the word yediyah. Yediyah is knowledge. Oh, we understand what knowledge is. Knowledge is that which I know. And therefore there is a contradiction. If I know what's going to be, then how does a person truly have free will? But God's knowledge is not our knowledge. And whatever God's knowledge means, it doesn't cancel out the possibility of our free will. And perhaps this is also a way in understanding that. Right? Whereas if I were, the example I like to give, if I were to have gone into a time machine, right? Actually, I did this. Right? I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to share this. I was in a time machine.
Ooh, really?
And I traveled to this morning. And then I went back.
In Irvine?
Right? I went back. Right? And I took some notes when I was here. Right? And I wrote down that Chava will be wearing a white sweater. Right? And Chaim Rivka will be wearing a black sweater. And Elizabeth will be wearing a gray sweater. I wrote all this down. Right? And here it is as I'm reading to you right now. Amazing. I knew all this. Right? Now, does that mean that you didn't have your free will? Everyone had their free will this morning to decide what sort of sweater, if any, right, will I put on, right? And I saw that some will not be wearing a sweater at all. Some will like the cold, right? So my knowledge of I zoomed ahead, so to speak, and I saw what people chose. That didn't affect anyone's free will. I was just privy to that. So there are ways of understanding that. There are ways that are given. But time is a domain that restrains us. But in the spiritual realm, this cloak is not there. So time does not restrain those in the spiritual realm. And therefore Ramchal explains, when a person goes to sleep, so parts of the neshama leave the body. And they enter into this spiritual realm. And when they're in this spiritual realm, there can be communication between that neshama and other essences, whatever they are, beings in that spiritual realm who are not bound by time. And certain information can be transferred. And then a person wakes up and the neshama comes back inside. And we wake up and say, that was strange. I dreamt that. And you had an exact vision of something that, lo and behold, a week later or a month later or a year later, that's exactly what happens. And that is how the Ramchal explains from a Jewish Torah perspective the possibility. Now again, the vast majority of our dreams are convoluted, right? In a biological sense, we say our mind is sorting out a lot of things, right? Trying to make sense of certain things, is sorting out a lot of things, and mostly it is different things that occurred, things that are weighing on our minds, things that we're hoping for, that are all coming together in a way that at the time it makes sense, right? And then when we wake up, it's like, wow, right? If we remember it, and it's amazing how elusive it is, right? Something you're almost there, and you just can't pull it back. There's this whole aspect of our mind and of our soul that's just, it's there, but it's not there. So that's just an introduction I wanted to give about dreams. But before we go into the Parsha, there's a beautiful explanation that is said, a beautiful pshat that is said in the Shir HaMalot that we're familiar with, the Shir HaMalot that we sing every Shabbos, right, before benching. And we say, right, when Hashem will bring back Shivat Tzion, when God will bring back the remnants of Zion, meaning at the time of the ingathering of the exiles, Hayinu Kechol Min. Right? So normally that's translated is, we will be like dreamers. Right? We will be Hayinu, we will be like dreamers, meaning it'll be like a dream come true. But if we're very careful with the wording, and very often in Ktuvim, in Navi, in the scriptures, the tenses are not always exact. Right? Very often, right, we're talking about a prophecy, what will be, it says it in the past, and because it's as good as done. Right? If this is a prophecy, it's in the books. It's as good as done. So the tenses are not always. So certainly, Hayinu Kechomim, the simple understanding is, we will be like dreamers, even though Hayinu is past tense. We were like dreamers. But an explanation that I heard is, at that time of absolute clarity, right, the time of the Geula, the time of redemption, is referred to as the time of clarity. During Hanukkah, we light the Chanukiah, we light the Hanukkah lights. And those small lights, we say a little bit of light can dispel a great amount of darkness. I mentioned that the windows in King Solomon's, in Shlomo HaMelech's Beit HaMikdash, in his temple, were constructed in a very strange manner. Normally, the windows are small on the outside and large on the inside of the house, and that way you're protected from the elements, the cold, or whatever else might be happening outside there, but the maximum of light from the outside goes to the inside. You have a small porthole, but then it opens up on the inside and the light spreads all about, and the light from the outside illuminates the inside room. In the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, the windows were constructed in an opposite fashion. They were small on the inside and large on the outside, to show that it's not the Beit HaMikdash that needs the light from the world, but it's the world that needs the light of the Beit HaMikdash. So this idea of the light is that there is this illumination, right? There is this clarity. That's what will be at the time of the Mashiach. Then we'll have this perspective that everything will make sense. Everything will fall into place. And that which we thought was so important, we recognize now was not so important. Things that we didn't give much importance to, we realize then that they are of paramount importance. And we look back at our lives, and Hayinu Kecholnim. It was like a dream. Meaning, just like in a dream we look back, at the time of the dream it made a lot of sense. Right? This person was there and that person was there and then this person flew. I mean, just crazy things going on. When you're in the dream it makes sense. Afterwards you look back and say, wow, that was bizarre. What was I thinking? So, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Tzion, Hashem will bring back the Shivat Tzion. At the time of the redemption, we're going to look back at our life and it'll be like a dream. We're going to say, it made so much sense then. It even seemed logical to me then. But what was I thinking? It will have that dreamlike quality that when you're in the midst of it, it seems to make sense. But looking back, you say it didn't make sense at all. At that point, we'll look back at so much of our life and we'll say, when I was living that life, it made sense. But I really was missing, it didn't make sense. I was missing out on this clarity. And I realize now that it had this bizarre, dreamlike aspect to it.
If our life is bizarre and has a dreamlike quality, where does responsibility come in? Because things are happening that don't make sense. So how do we know we're sure? How do we know we're responsible? How do we know we're doing the right thing?
So we have to learn and study and pursue and try to make our best call. Right? You know, as I mentioned before last week, a couple of weeks ago, that the mashal, the parable that Shalom Shwadron gives as part of the battle that Yaakov had with that angel of Esav, and that La Yehudim Hayta Ora, the Jews had light. Ora, we say, is Torah. We say Ciner mitzvah the Torah, or the mitzvah are considered like a candle. Torah is light, so we are meant to study Torah, try to understand Torah, and use that light as a compass and to illuminate situations. I don't think Rav Moshe Feinstein of blessed memory is going to look back on his life and say, "What was I thinking?" I think he's going to look back and say, right? Certainly, I think everyone will look back and say there are things that we could have done better, but I don't think he'll look back and say, "What was I thinking?" Right? So we have to do our best to study and pursue and to make decisions that are eternal decisions.
Even though things are confusing,
Yeah.
and set up in a way to confuse us.
Yeah. Olam hazeh is compared to choshech. This world is compared to darkness, right? We say the Jewish day begins with the night and then goes into the day, right? We start off with this lack of clarity, and then there becomes the clarity. The one place where the Jewish day starts with day is in the Beit HaMikdash. There, it starts with day, meaning if I have to bring a sacrifice, I bring it that day, and then the night follows the day. There, only in the Beit HaMikdash, only in the temple, is there this immediate clarity. Elsewhere, the Jewish day begins with night and then goes into day. So this is a world where truth is cloaked, right? It's obfuscated, and we need to search. We need to search and really do our best to apply ourselves. Let's go over here. Vayhi Miketz Shnatayim Yamim. Who'd like to lead off for us?
שבע פרות יפות מראה ובריאות בשר ותראינה באחו. והנה שבע פרות אחרות עולות אחריהם מן היאור, רעות מראה ודקות בשר, ותעמודנה אצל הפרות על שפת היאור.
Good. Let's pause over there. In English, someone, please.
It happened at the end of 2 years to the day. Pharaoh was dreaming that, behold, he was standing over the river, when behold, out of the river there emerged 7 cows of beautiful appearance and robust flesh, and they were grazing in the marshland. Then behold, 7 other cows emerged after them out of the river, of ugly appearance and gaunt flesh, and they stood next to the cows on the banks of the river. The cows of ugly appearance and gaunt flesh ate the 7 cows of beautiful appearance and robust, and Pharaoh awoke.
Okay, so that's the first dream of Pharaoh. Now, it happened at the end of 2 years to the day, right? At the end of 2 years, the question is 2 years from what? So you have to look back to page 220 and 221. Okay, this was at the end when Joseph had just, actually let's go back to 219. Joseph had just interpreted the 2 dreams of Pharaoh's officers who were in the prison with him, the baker and the butler. And he interpreted the dream of the butler that you will once again be in the service. Look on page 219, verses 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, Joseph said to him, this is interpretation, the 3 tenders are 3 days, in another 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and will restore you to your post. You will be reinstated as the chief butler, and you will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, as was the former practice when you were his cup bearer. And then Yosef continues, if only you would think of me with yourself when he benefits you. Right? Ki im zachartani. You should remember me when he does good to you. And do to me kindness. Vasita na. And please, do with me chesed, kindness. V'his kartani. And mention me to Pharaoh. V'hoseitani. And get me out of this place. Min habayit hazeh. 221, for indeed I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, even though I have done nothing for them to have put me in the pit. So Yosef asks, remember me, along with you, when you will be treated well, and do to me chesed. Remember me, speak of me to Paro, mention me to Paro, and get me out of here. And then the baker saw that the butler's dream was interpreted well. So he said to Yosef, I also had my dream. And Joseph's response to him is, 18, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets of 3 days. In 3 days, Paro will also lift your head, but a different lifting of the head. Lifting of the head can mean reassuming a position, or it can mean, correct, right? Right? It can mean the lifting of the head, literally, and hang you on a tree. Birds, okay. And it was on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a feast for his servant, and he counted the chamberlain of the cupbearers and the chamberlain of the bakers among his servants. He restored the chamberlain of the cupbearers, the butler, to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. But he hanged the chamberlain of the bakers, just as Joseph had interpreted him. Yet the chamber of the cupbearers did not remember Joseph, but he forgot him. And then we begin, and it was at the end of 2 years. So Rashi says, very interestingly.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that Joseph should not have asked for the favor.
Good. Let's deal with that right now, Rachel. Let's deal with that right now.
And that's
So-
it was in Yisroel's drash that the second asking showed some sort of lack of faith in Hashem.
Okay. Who'd you say? What did you say? I'm sorry?
It was in either Yisroel's drash for the women.
Okay. So let's hear.
It was
Right? So Rashi says, Mipnei shetala bo Yosef lizachro.
where are you?
I'm reading Rashi. You don't have it. Okay? It might be in the English. Yeah, let me see how he brings it. Okay. Because Yosef, talabo Yosef. Yosef, what is talabo? Depended, right? Literally hung himself on him, right? He depended, he hinged himself. Joseph made himself dependent on this butler, Lizachro, to remember him, to mention him to Pharaoh. Huskak liot asur shtei shanim. That's what required him to be imprisoned for these 2 years. As it says, Shenemar Ashrei Gever Shasam Hashem Niftacho. Fortunate is a person who places his trust in God. V'lo pana el rahavim, and does not turn to that which has no real substance. V'lo b'tach al Mitzrayim hakriyim rahav. So because Yosef made himself dependent on the Pharaoh, therefore he needed to spend.
The Pharaoh?
Sorry, right? To the Sarah Mashkim, thank you, to the butler, right? Therefore he needed to spend 2 more years in the prison, and therefore it begins, and it was at the end of the 2 years to the day, those 2 years, Pharaoh dreamt, and now Yosef will come out in order to interpret those dreams. Now, the time had come for Yosef to come out of the prison. Now look on page 221. Where we have, on the bottom of the page there, we have the commentary by verse 23.
So that is
Okay? And look, the second paragraph there. It is normal and proper for people to seek out avenues for their rescue, as Joseph had done. His mistake was in, over here, right? The second column, verses 23, second paragraph after 23. His mistake was in not recognizing that the entire episode of the chamberlain's imprisonment and dreams had been brought about by God as a means of helping Joseph. He should have seen that God was in the process of saving him, so there was no need to ask for the cupbearer's help.
So it's
Baruch
okay.
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
So it's okay in general life for us to ask.
Okay, so what's interesting is that we do need to make hishtadlut. In this world, hishtadlut means attempts, right? We need to make hishtadlut. So what was wrong? What was wrong with what Joseph did? We're supposed to make hishtadlus. We're supposed to make our attempts. So what was wrong with what Yosef did?
But you just read what's wrong.
Yes, but I want to clarify that further. It's not as simple, right? I recognize that it's God orchestrating these events. You know, the famous story. The person is you know, there's a flood and the person goes up to the top floor of his house. God help me, God help me. And a boat comes by and says, come here. Says, no, God's going to help me, right? Boat goes to the next house, right? And now he's on top of the roof. He's climbing on top of the chimney. God help me. Helicopter comes, lets down a ladder. No, God's going to help me, right? And then the guy dies. The guy, why didn't you help me? Well, I sent the boat and I sent the helicopter. In other words, we're supposed to utilize that which God gives us. And something that I've had the real pleasure of seeing is how a lot of my friends and just people that I know, and just over the years, everyone, how people take their unique experiences and they use that to become the type of people that they do, and their profession, or if they're in Klei Kodesh, if they're in you know, the rabbin or whatever it is, they take their unique experiences, and that allows them to be uniquely effective in certain areas that had they not had. We're supposed to take all that comes our way and utilize that. So perfect over here, right? He's in the prison, and God sends him these two guys. He interprets the dreams, right? This is his ticket out of there. So what was wrong for Yosef speaking? Now, the Medrash is actually a little clearer than Rashi says over here, that he mentioned twice, right? If you look back on page 218, 219, the very last verse there, verse 14. In Hebrew, it's clearer. Ki im zechartani. In English, it says, if only you would think of me with yourself. And then it says, and mention me to Paro. But actually, the think of me and mention to me are the same words. In Hebrew, it's zechartani, right? Remember me, right? It doesn't sound right in English. We don't say, remember me to Paro. But that's what he's actually saying. And then again, v'hiskartani el Paro. And remember me to Paro. So the Medrash said, because he said, remember me twice, that's why he was given those 2 years. So there are different approaches to this. Rav Soloveitchik asked the question as follows. Oh, so because he said, remember me 2 years, that's twice, that's why he had to spend 2 years in prison. Had he said to him, remember me once, then what would follow? 1 year in prison. Wrong, he says. Right? He says, once is proper hishtadlus. What's the problem with ice, and then the second time should give him 1 year? So no, the second time is showing that even the first one wasn't just my normal hishtadlus, but I was actually placing my trust, I was relying on this person. And I think that's the key. And that's a word that I hung on for a moment when we started the Rashi. Mipnei shetala bo Yosef. Tala is to hang, to make dependent. Yes, we are supposed to make hishtadlus. We have to make our efforts. If a person is sick, What must they do? Go to a doctor. If you need antibiotics, you take antibiotics, right? The Christian Scientists is a group that says that no, who are we to interfere with God's plans? If God made us sick, you got to pray to God to get better. And if not, then, and you die, it meant you're supposed to die. But who are you to get involved? And the Torah clearly says, V'rapo yirapeh. The Torah says we have an obligation, mikan shenitan reshut, l'rofei l'rapo. The Gemara says from here, the doctor has permission to heal. Meaning, we could have made such an argument, but we're not allowed to make such an argument. Such an argument is incorrect. Meaning, it is God's involvement, but He wants us to make those efforts. However, so you get the best surgeon to do the surgery. But after you make all that hishtardlut, after you make all that effort, one is supposed to understand, I've done what I need to do. God, let this be successful. Meaning, it's not the surgeon who will ultimately decide if this will be successful or not. Right? The Gemara Kedushin says, Tov sheberofim legehenim. Okay? Now, don't get upset. Okay, Sue, about your father, about this. I'll explain further. It says the best of the doctors are destined to go to hell. What does that mean? Right? Doctors are wonderful. Right? Like, how many Jewish doctors do we have? Right? So, but the idea is that if a doctor thinks that he is the end, it's all up to him. If he thinks that he is the one who truly decides the outcome, that's a problem. And actually, Tov is the gematria of 17. Right? And there are 18, Shemon Esrei is 18 blessings, 18 blessings. One of them is the blessing of Rafa'enu, heal us, God. So if he only says 17 of those 18, if he leaves out the blessing, heal us, O God, because he doesn't need that one, that's a Tov, it's only 17, that's where there's a problem. So we need to make our Hishtardless. But we can't rely, we can't mistakenly think that is what will bring it about. A Talmud of mine I'm very close to is often involved in these different different things that he's trying. Right? And we speak often. And we'll use me as a sounding board, we'll speak often. Every time I close off, whether it's an email or a conversation, I say, may it be with bracha. May it be with a blessing from God. Meaning with all of the due diligence and all of the work that you do and all that you do, understand that it's all coming from Hashem. Now, we're talking about, again, Yosef on his level. But Yosef on his level, Tala Bo, he made it, he was hoping that this guy would come through. As opposed to what should his thinking have been? May God make it happen. Right? It would seem to make sense through him. But however it happens, that's up to you, God. There's a concept that the Chazon Ish, who was a great tzaddik and rabbi in Bnei Brak, right? Wow. Right? See, he would say there's a concept of Zoreya b'makom echad v'kotzer b'makom acher, which means you plant over here and you harvest, you reap over there. Meaning, you have to make your effort. You need to plant. But the planting is not necessarily what brings about the result you want. You've done that. You cross it off your list. I've planted. Now, where will the blessing come from? That's already out of our realm. And how often do we put our efforts in one area, and then we find that that's not what worked, but it came from elsewhere. Zoreya b'makam echad, you plant in one place, and you harvest, you reap elsewhere. So Yosef, on his level, Tala bit bo Yosef. You have to make the effort. You have to make the effort. But understand that ultimately, I'm not putting my faith into this investment, into this butler, into this doctor. I'm making my best effort, and my heart then turns to God to say, let this be successful.
It's all clear. You have to make an effort, and it's not up to you then. But is it okay to ask someone to speak on your behalf?
Absolutely.
But,
Absolutely.
But not to put all your hopes into it.
Absolutely. But to understand that it doesn't all rest on that person.
So his mistake was that he asked twice, showing that he
Relied
relied too much on
Right. And therefore, so if he's supposed to ask once,
it would be okay.
and then he asked a second time, so why did he get 2 years? Why did he only get 1 year? Let's do the math. So again, we started off, he asked twice, so he got 2 years. So I asked the question, so had he asked once, how long would he have gotten?
Nothing.
And the answer, so that we initially we'd say 1 year, the answer is 0. Oh, if that's the case, so how many, so he wrongly asked how many times? Once. So why does he get 2 years? He should only get 1 year.
We don't know what the penalty is for asking the second time.
Okay, perhaps. Or we could say that by asking the second time, what did that indicate? The first one was remiss. If I'm asking the second time, then my first one was not taking care of my Hishtardless. My first one was truly putting my faith. So now I asked twice, now it's 2 years. Debbie.
I was going to say this concept of shaliach being that a person is an emissary for God's will. So therefore, the butler was an emissary. And that was where, I guess, that Yosef didn't recognize
Correct.
that.
Correct.
The concept of shaliach. A doctor is considered a shaliach of Hashem.
Shaliach
He
Right.
is a
An
messenger
emissary.
of God.
Emissary.
Emissary.
Right. The one that I'm sending to do it.
Send
Yeah.
him to do this for you.
Right. The Chavetz Chaim gives a fantastic mashal. He says sometimes you hoped someone would do a favor, do something for you, and they don't come through. Right? So you get upset. You get upset with that person. So the Chavetz Chaim compares it to, in the old days there used to be payphones outside. Right? I remember then. Right? So you pick up the phone, right? And in yeshiva or something like that, you go, yes, can you please call so-and-so? Right? So you're going to call, Shmuel. Right? So you think this person is Shmuel. You say, hi, Shmuel? You have a phone call. And the guy says, sorry, my name's not Shmuel. Right? So what do you say to the guy? Why aren't you Shmuel? Why aren't you Shmuel? Right? You don't say that.
Say, excuse me?
He's not Shmuel. If he's not Shmuel, he's not Shmuel. What do you want from the guy? The Chavetz Chaim says sometimes you think this is the person from whom you're going to get your help. Right? And it doesn't come from that person. So why aren't you Shmuel? He's not Shmuel. He's not Shmuel. Move on. But where is it coming from? I was placing my trust in him. And if it didn't come through, now I'm out. As opposed to saying, right, if this is supposed to come, it's going to come. I need to make my Hishtardless. I need to make my attempt. Right? Can you please help me? No. Okay. Have a good day. And move on. And move on. Right? To understand what's coming and where it's coming from. Now this is certainly, I think we're all, I'm certain, I don't tell anyone else, I'm certainly at fault with this, that we get, and this comes back to that confusion that we have, right? That we think this person is the one who needs to help us. If it's not coming from there, then I'm angry with that person, I'm angry with that group, I'm angry with that shul, I'm angry with that youth group, whatever it is, happens, right? But that's because we're getting confused. We're getting confused along the way. Yeah.
It's a little bit not that simple to me, because if we look at Pasuk 10, 9, when they ask him about the dream, he said Elokim Pitronim. So he really knows it's not in his power. And we see all the time, and all of a sudden he thinks a person will help him. The way I see it all the time when you look about his dream, about his relationship with the brother, he really wants to be punished. I mean, he knows they hate him. Why are you going rubbing it in? And again, and again, and again. Sort of, he thinks that he needs to be punished on something, and then God will help him. It's too much to think.
So
he
next
knew,
week,
and all of a sudden
we're going to deal with almost, basically the resolution of this whole sale of Yosef and the brothers. So we will deal with different approaches to that, right? Was he? It seems almost like you're saying that he's looking for punishment. He knows they hate him. Why is he telling them these dreams? Right? And there are different approaches to that, which we will work on. Over here, I think the point you're making is a very important point, actually. Right? When he saw that they were downcast, right? He said, we have a dream, no one can interpret it, and he said, God interprets the dreams. Right? Yosef was Yosef HaTzadik. Right? So what we're saying over here is that on his level, there was, clearly he knew that this was, the interpretations come from God. And clearly he knew that this was God sending. The question is, how much in his heart, how much trust, how much reliance, better word, was he, that's probably the tala, it's reliance, right? How much reliance was he putting onto this butler as opposed to on God? And on Yosef's madrega, on Yosef's level, that was a problem. Manifested by these two words, remember me, zachartani, zachartani, which led to the 2 years, and then Paro had his dream because now the 2 years are up. Yes, Dov, I want to make one more point.
Okay, after that about Yosef, the Egyptian doesn't show much gratitude, does he?
Correct. That's correct. And that's his problem. And that's an important point, Dov. Right? This person could have helped me. And this person said, Rabbi, take a hike. That's between him and God. And that's not my realm. My realm is, if the help is supposed to come to me, it'll come to me. God will send it via the right person. He's not Shmuel. He's not Shmuel. That's how I need to view it. And I can't be upset with him. Now, him and God, that's his dealings. That's not for me to get involved with. Is he justified? Is he not justified? Again, I'm not the judge of this world. I'm staying far away from there.
Somebody bails you out of prison and there's no gratitude. What kind of guy is this?
Again, that's between him and God, or her and God. That's not for me to get involved with.
Hashem bails us out of Egypt. What kind of gratitude?
Okay, that's for us. Fair enough. Now, just one last point I want to make, which is a very beautiful point that the Beis Halevi brings out. The Parsha began, page 222, right, 223. Vayhi Miketz shnatayim yamim uparo cholein. And it was at the end of 2 years, and Paro dreamt, etc. The Medrash says, Kates sam l'choshech. Kates, Miketz, an end point was set for the darkness, and then Paro dreamt. So the Beis Halevi explains what this Medrash is coming to teach us. And this comes back to the choshech, to the darkness, and to the confusion that we have in this world. If we were to read this story, we would say, kids are sometimes given different pictures and need to place them in order. So I'm going to give you different events, right? And let's place them in order. I'm not looking for chronological order. I'm looking for cause and effect. Okay? So, right, cause and result. So, Paro had a dream. Joseph came out of prison. Reading this story, we would say very simply, what happened over here? What caused what? Paro's dream led to Yosef coming out of prison. Right? That's obvious, isn't it? Paro had his dream. Joseph interpreted the dream. Joseph came out of prison. So Paro's dream was the cause. The result was Joseph coming out of prison. That's what the first pasuk is saying, no. Vayhi Miketz yamim. And it was at the end of 2 years, and Paro dreamt.
It was time for him.
So it was time for Yosef to come out of prison, and therefore, that's the cause, and therefore what happened? Paro dreamt. And that is a mouthful when we think about it. And that is something when tragically a person leaves this world, and very often we love to say, a person, passes away tragically at a younger age, we want to hear almost the person was overweight, the person was a smoker. We want to hear all these things that don't apply to me. And that way, okay, I'm good, right? But, and sometimes it's a tragic.
Rabbi, my niece, husband, the daughter was bat mitzvah, let's say now it's 2 weeks, a week and a half. He had a massive heart attack, a week and a half, 48 years old. A massive heart attack. His children are 7, 10, and 12. Massive heart attack.
Yeah.
Came out of gym, died in the car.
Yeah.
And after the bat mitzvah, a week and a half. So everyone was at the bat mitzvah, was at the funeral.
Yeah.
And
there's no shortage of tragic events, right? There's no shortage of tragic events, and that is the world that we live in, which is a small part of the long book that we don't understand. But what we need to, what the Medrash is telling us is, let's say it was a car accident, right? It wasn't the car accident that ended this person's life. For whatever reason, it was the time for this person to go, and that came about through the car accident. I've mentioned before, I had a sister, Aleh Shalom, who died from brain stem cancer when she was 13. And it was horrific. It destroyed the family for a while. It took us a long time to get back on our feet. Years and years and years later, I'm teaching at a yeshiva in Israel. And a new boy in my class, I'd always sit down to have a conversation to get to know each of the boys. And the boy's telling me about his family, right? He grew up in Forest Hills, I grew up in Forest Hills, we had a lot of common ground. And then he starts to mention his sister, and I see he's getting a little bit emotional. And before I sat with this boy, I had read an article in Reader's Digest about a doctor, I think it was Fred Epstein, who had pioneered a way of doing surgery on brain stem cancer. Okay? I remember reading this article and thinking to myself, Dr. Epstein, where were you when our family needed you? And then I caught myself and I said, it was, for whatever reason, unbeknownst to us, it was her time to go. So therefore God sent something that would bring about that end. And had this surgery been pioneered beforehand, it would have been something else. It wasn't that which took my sister, it was the time to go, and that's what was used. Then, a year later, whatever it is, I'm sitting talking to this boy, and he gets a little bit emotional about his sister. And I said, would you rather not talk about it? He goes, no, I'd like to tell you about it, Rabbi. And he starts to tell me that he had a sister. He has a sister who had brain stem cancer. Right? And I say, Dr. Epstein? He looks at me like what? Like, how do you know the name of my sister's surgeon?
Wow.
So I shared with him my experience. And he said, but the surgery saved her life, but there were some complications in the surgery. And you're dealing with the brainstem, you're dealing with control of the entire body, physical development, everything. And he said that she never emotionally matured past being a 6 or a 7-year-old. And to me, that really helped for me, for my own head, to put things into perspective. We don't know why. We don't know why this 48-year-old. We don't know why his sister. We don't know why my sister. And everyone, every family, everyone has their list on which they put items. We don't know why. This is God's world, not our world. Our belief, our faith is that ultimately we will see the whole picture and it will make sense to us. But until then, we are living in a world of choshech, a world of darkness. Hayinu kechomim, we will be like dreamers, but it's confusing. But that helped me personally put things into perspective. And for whatever reason, God has the course for each person and the course for the family that needs to adjust to and deal with and come to terms with whatever comes their way. And He'll send that which will bring about that result at the time that it will bring about that result. And for those that brainstem cancer was meant to be the cause of death, that's when it came about. And for those that there was a surgery, but who knows what can result, then that's what comes about. But we shouldn't get confused between the cause and the result, because then we can go mad. You know, the cases of a person that they were involved in a car accident with a truck, and a family was killed. There's an article I read a while ago, right? And the person then got all of the credit card, right? He got the credit card bill, and he saw that his wife and kids had stopped at a deli, and he saw exactly what they ordered. And he thought to himself, if only they had ordered another slice of deli, that would have delayed everything by 2 seconds. Then when there's a high-speed crash, 2 seconds is 100 yards. 2 seconds is almost a close call, as opposed to a fatality. And you can drive yourself mad thinking, had they not stopped, had they ordered one more slice, one less slice, one more slice, they would have been there, one less slice. Right? And you can drive yourself mad, and Kate Sam L'choshech. Right? That's what this Medrash, the Beis Levi, is telling us. Don't get confused between causes and effects.
Right.
And that's the only way I think that we can keep our heads about us when we have these issues that come up, these situations that come up that we hear about in our own lives. That's the only way that we keep on going. Yes, Johnny?
I think also it's parallel in that Pharaoh's dreaming is still a Hoshech, and then when Joseph comes and starts to say, "This is what God is telling you," that's a little bit more toward the clarity of light.
That's nice, right? Coming out of the darkness, right?
Rabbi, can I ask you two things privately?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And one more thing.
Yes.
It's not by chance that scientists like Albert Einstein and the whole number of others came from Judaism. It's because of the
Not by
abstract
chance.
thinking. It's because Judaism
Yeah.
is such a multifaceted,
Yeah.
multi.
Yeah.
And people learn to think abstractly and
Yeah.
look at things from.
Yeah.
None other religion teaches that.
Yeah.
None other religion.
I hear. This Friday night we're having a community Friday night meal here in the shul, so please join us, RSVP with the office so we'll know to prepare, and please come and join us. It'll be a very beautiful Shabbos Suda, Hanukkah Shabbos Suda.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Okay. I can come over
Dov,
here.
you want to just go to my office? Whatever you, or here's fine. Whatever you like.
I was going to put in the tzedakah box. He doesn't go through, so he should go to tzedakah
Okay,
to
thank you. I will do
something.
that. Thank you, Dov.